That guy stealing the silverware. Hi, everybody. We're going to start in about 2 minutes. And we wanted to give you some entertainment to begin with. And we're going to show it a second time so you can pick up some of the subtle nuances.
All right, welcome everyone. Thank you all for coming. Please mute, and we would love if you could turn your camera on, or you can keep it off. And if you're eating, please keep it off. Hello, hello. I'd like everyone to share your name, where you're from, and if you are from an organization or a school. So you can share that in the chat. And feel free to put any questions or comments as they come up in the chat, and we'll address them as we go, or during the Q&A session at the end, which will be right at the end of the presentation. We will have a survey link where you can give more detailed comments or ask for more information. And we'll also stay beyond the scheduled end time to discuss whatever anyone wants to ask or share. So the link to the survey is in the chat for anyone who has to leave before the end of the webinar. So you can click on that link now and it'll stay on your browser and you can complete it at the end of the webinar. We really like to hear what worked, but we also really want to hear what we can improve. So now we will begin the presentation. So I will be welcoming Michael Jazz, our presenter.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Yes, I hope you enjoyed. If you came on time or a little early, you saw the holiday meal that was taking place, and we enjoyed that and wanted to start off with a little humor. And again, as Rachel said, if you would put your name and what city you're from, and if you're from an organization, we really appreciate that. We enjoy seeing who's here. And we did put the survey in the chat now. So if for some reason you have to leave early, please put that on your browser, because it really helps us understand how we can improve our presentations, and the feedback's very helpful. Okay, well, surviving the holidays. Today it's going to be a little more interactive than usual, but it's as interactive as you wish. And I'd like to start off and ask everyone, have you ever heard someone say, that family, that couple is so dysfunctional? Has anybody ever heard that? Well, I have a question. How would you define functional? Every time I've ever heard someone say, they're so dysfunctional, I say, could you define functional? So if anybody wants to share, you can turn on your mic and say how you describe functional, or you can put it into the chat. Well, most of the time that I hear this, people either don't have an answer, or they have something that's based on their judgment. Now, every family has the potential to create harmony, and there are many families that are close-knit, but if anyone whose family dynamic is here, who is generally positive, again, feel free to turn on your mic, share about it, or post it in the chat if you have harmony and a close-knit family. And today, with politics and all the things that are going on in the world, many families are struggling, but not all. So we don't ever make generalizations. Anyone have a comment? Okay. All right. Well, now you may find some of what we share tonight to be of value that you can bring to your interactions over the holidays. So we hope you'll find some information that will support you in having a thriving, satisfying, and fulfilling experience during this, we call it thanks-taking. No offense to anyone, but it appears changes are happening. For instance, Columbus Day is on its way. Hi, somebody has their. Somebody want to make a comment, or have you forgotten to turn off your mic? Oh, okay, great. So, as I said, no offense, but as I said, it appears Columbus Day is on its way out, and Indigenous Culture Day is starting to replace that. Well, the same thing is there's this myth about Thanksgiving, and you'll pardon me for saying this, but some people are now calling this holiday Thanks-taking. Why? Well, the Thanksgiving meal with our European ancestors and the indigenous people wasn't exactly peace and love.
Michael, I believe you're muted now. I think that you may have muted yourself. You're still muted.
Michael, can you unmute yourself?
How's that? Am I unmuted?
Good. You're good now.
Very good. Thank
Great.
you.
Okay, I'm going to start over. So you'll pardon me for saying this, but some people are now calling this holiday Thanks-taking. Why? Well, the Thanksgiving meal with Europeans and indigenous people wasn't exactly peace and love. We took from the indigenous people for centuries and almost wiped them off the face of the earth. So today, there are 536 tribes remaining, and many of them are restoring their language, customs, and culture. So let's give thanks for that and all the other advances in social justice. Now, to some survival strategies for the holidays. Relationships, a subject that comes up in one of our classes. We present this work in a lot of schools in New York, and a subject that came up in a high school class in Manhattan in 2008 was the happy word. I got up in front of the class one day and I said, I never want to be in a happy relationship. Kids rolled their eyes and looked confused, said, what kind of statement is that? I said, well, I'm happy and I'm sad. We have good days and bad days. We have sunny days and cloudy days. We have ups and we have downs. How often have you heard someone say,
and stayed a place where I could observe that long and pay attention to how people behave and how they made decisions, the food that they ate.
Could you turn your microphone up so we can hear you better? So how often have you heard someone say, he doesn't make me happy anymore, she doesn't make me happy anymore? Well, the happy word can be a trap. We agreed that the words to describe the relationships we wanted were, I want a meaningful relationship, thriving, fulfilling, flourishing relationship. What happens when there are arguments, when families get together? They're often draining and uncomfortable. One day, I was with a group of friends and we were arguing. Suddenly, someone just shouted, "Let's all just be with the discomfort." Silence. Immediately, everyone stopped talking. And there was this sense of relaxation. And we gave the discomfort a space. So in a few moments, the tension lifted, and then we all had this sense of relief. Try this if there's an argument or a disagreement when you have your family gathering. Let's just be with the discomfort. It's amazing. I mean, I have used this several times when there's some dissension between me and another person, and it lifts the tension. So here's one for couples when they are arguing. In the middle of it, one person can say, "What liberates the most love?" This usually shifts the tone. And I coach couples, and this is something that we use fairly often. Make a note of this. What liberates the most love? Especially those of you who are here who have a partner and you sometimes have disagreements. What liberates the most love? Okay, we say relationship education. This is some information about our program. We say relationship education is the missing component in our learning process. And tonight, we will share some key elements of our program, Healthy Relationships 101. Here's a bit about our work. We have a book and we have a curriculum, and we've mostly worked with New York City schools, but recently we started working with child advocacy centers. We are also giving training sessions for prison counselors and various organizations, such as a Head Start program at an indigenous community in Oregon. Let me mention something about child advocacy centers, also known as CACs. We did our first training sessions with the CACs in Missouri. And what we found out was, and if you think about it, a child is in a tenuous situation and they get taken from whatever home life the adults they're with. What used to happen when that child is taken out of a precarious situation? Well, they go to the police, and then they go to the court, and then they go to a lawyer, and then they go to a doctor, and then they go to a counselor, and then they go to a forensic investigator. This adds more trauma for the child. At child advocacy centers, and they're in every state in the country, all of those services are in one place, so the child is not pulled around. And I was so amazed to hear about this, and I really think it's important. I want to let everybody know that in your state, and even if you're in a rural area, there is the more rural areas pull together and put their centers in one place so that the children will be able to be acclimated to a safer environment. So now our book covers key elements of our work, and you can download it at no charge. We're putting the link in the chat now, and it's only going to be free for another few weeks. Now, recently, our curriculum and guidebook have been put into digital format. So if you are from an organization or a school and you might be interested in our curriculum or guidebook for an organization, we'll be able to send it digitally. Okay. So this is called the Adverse Childhood Experiences, and we're going to be talking about this in depth on December 7th. The beginning of the month, the first Tuesday, we talk about trauma, resilience, and also neuroscience. A lot on neuroscience now. You're going to hear so much about it in the days and weeks and months to come. But an important aspect of our work regarding neuroscience and resilience is we introduced to, especially with teachers, a research project called the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, becoming very well known. Now, this study began in the mid-90s with Dr. Vincent Felitti. Here you see his picture. He had been running a weight loss clinic in Kaiser Permanente in San Diego. And what he found was that quite a few people had come to the clinic and lost a lot of weight, like hundreds of pounds, but then they dropped out and didn't come back. So he reached out to some of them and requested if he could ask questions. Now we're getting feedback, right? Okay, so one of the first people that he spoke with was a woman, and he asked her a number of questions. First question was, well, how much did you weigh when you were in first grade? How much did you weigh when you were in high school? And he meant to say, how much did you weigh when you first had sex, assuming this person was adult? She said, he said, how much did you weigh? She said 40 pounds. She was sexually abused when she was very young. Well, he was shocked. And this is the mid-90s. And there was very little awareness about this kind of abuse at that point. So as he interviewed more and more people, he realized that this was more widespread than he could have ever imagined. And he decided to begin an investigation. And this led to the start of the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. And we'll go into detail about this more on the 7th of December. And it's also known as the ACE study. Now, to give you an idea of some of what he discovered, you can do a word search for a short tribute to Dr. Vincent Felitti. It's F-E-L-I-T-T-I, and we'll put it on the chat toward the end of the workshop. Now, an example of trauma that led to a severe health crisis was shared by Dr. Felitti in this tribute, and it was about a relative who was traumatized as a young man. And he was obsessed with baseball, wanted to be a professional baseball player. And his arm, he broke his arm.
He wanted to be a baseball player.
He broke his arm when he was 12. And later that destroyed his dreams. And he eventually started drinking and smoking, was overweight, became diabetic, and he died when he was 40. Years later, Dr. Felitti found out from another relative that his mother had broken his arm in a fit of rage. So one of the things that Dr. Felitti is working on now, and we've actually been working with him and another group, is he said one of the biggest health advances we could make would be to figure out how to improve parenting. And something he said also that really struck me is that animals can't survive if a mother abandons them. And too many of us have experienced a sense of abandonment in childhood. For me personally, due to extreme neglect, I somewhat died inside. All right, in the next, we're going to watch a very short film now to give you an idea how trauma affects a portion of our population, which is the prison population. So let's play this and can we turn up the sound?
Yeah, hey Rachel, did you share your sound with everybody?
It's time now, everyone. We're gonna do the compassion trauma circle. Is everyone ready to face their past with compassion? Is that a yes? While you were growing up, during your first 18 years of life, if a parent or other adult in the household often or very often would swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you, step inside the circle. If a parent or other adult in the household often or very often pushed, grabbed, slapped, or threw something at you, step inside the circle. If a parent or other adult in the household often or very often ever hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured, step inside the circle. If you often felt that no one in your family loved you or thought you were important or special, step inside the circle. If your family lived in extreme poverty, step inside the circle. Step inside the circle. Step inside the circle. Step inside the circle.
There is no shame. There is no shame.
I'm so good. Good to see you. How are you? Amen. Noel, good to see you. Welcome. I was abused as a young girl. I was beaten by my mother. I was verbally abused by my mother. I was sexually abused by another man. My father was an alcoholic. My mother was a rageaholic. I've driven drunk. I've sold drugs. I was a juvenile delinquent. Probably my story is similar to most of your stories in here. I'm white and I'm female and nothing happened to me. So, I got a get out of jail free card. And so I'm here now because I see myself in every one of you.
I'm a traumatized child, raised by a traumatized child. My mother was traumatized as well as her parents.
Like he said, we wasn't born in the world of being evil people. My mother didn't want me. She hid her pregnancy. She tried to flush me down the toilet. But as I learned about these things, I always asked myself what was wrong with me.
When I come to the circle and I see everybody else and she's reading off the questions and people stepping in further, I look at my childhood and I'm like, a lot of these people in this yard are just like me.
There was one step I should have taken that I didn't take, and I saw some of my brothers and my friends take that step, and I felt like such a coward. I wasn't brave enough to be there with them when they took that step. And every round after that, I took the most difficult step.
Our traumas kept us separated. We were all on a circumference, all standing apart. But once we began to acknowledge our traumas publicly, it brought us all closer together.
In prison, you're not supposed to show your weaknesses in prison now. But to want to do that, to walk in that circle like that, and to take each step forward was a reminder to ourselves that we still have a humanity and we worthy to be loved, though. Most people on the outside don't understand that we want to change so we can re-enter society better than what we left it.
And I think one of the things that when you was yelling that no shame and you had us yelling it out, it was freeing us too. And it was a point to where when I was looking at that and we was all looking at it in a circle, you can hear that echo, no shame. And that was very powerful, especially coming from a little lady like you.
I'm 76 years old. I've seen a lot. I don't like talking. I like to meet people that understand what's happening without words. And you one of them. Today has been one of the best days I had in my whole entire life. So I've been out here for it.
Okay, let's take a few moments and reflect. If you'd like to put something in the chat about this, we have done presentations with Fritzi Horstman. And if you would put any thoughts you have into the chat, we send them to her. She is working with prisons around the country. She is playing a very instrumental role in abolishing solitary confinement. So yes, if you'll please put a few words in the chat, and we send them to her every time. It always lifts her spirits, because these people here can't be with their family for the holidays. Okay, thank you everybody for sharing about this. One of the things that struck me about this video, we've shown it probably over 50 presentations. And after about 25 times, it was the prisoner that said, "I always thought there was something wrong with me." And I just started crying, because that has been the sort of demon thought in the back of my head, because of this rather severe neglect that I experienced as a child. And this is part of what really drives us to do this work, because so many kids out there think there's something wrong with them because of neglect and abuse and family turmoil. So we're really determined to get our work into schools throughout the country and beyond, get our curriculum into schools. And next Tuesday, we're going to go in depth about the what's called nonviolent communication. And we're going to talk about that briefly. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So at this holiday, you may consider asking someone in your life if there's anything they'd like to share that is in the far reaches of their memories. Why? Well, here is a picture of my dad, Benjamin. I grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It's Aunt Polly that he's holding, and that's Uncle Joseph. And they grew up. My dad grew up on a farm, and there was a fire in the barn, and Uncle Joseph did not get out. I'm pretty sure that my dad was probably blamed and shamed and who knows what else. And he was a workaholic. I hardly ever saw him. He died when I was 19. And I have to think that 40 years after my dad was gone, my cousin finds this picture and tells us what had happened. And I think my father just didn't want to feel, he didn't want to say to us, hey, something really shook me up when I was really young. But how could he? In the 40s and the 50s, even into the 60s, men don't cry, don't show your feelings. Well, especially those of you who still have a father or a mother, maybe ask subtly, is there anything that happened when you were really young that you've kind of put out of your mind? Because if our dad had told us about this, we would have felt so much closer to him. And so that's why I show this picture. All right, well, let's go to the next slide. And yeah, this is me. You can see my smiling face. And as I said, my dad was a workaholic. I didn't have a male mentor. I didn't have a male role model. He was working nonstop. And so, you know, for many kids, they take these pictures in school, but there's something else that's going on behind the smile. Now, one of the things that we talk about in regards to our schools is the phrase social and emotional learning. Well, my social and emotional learning began as a child. Well, with whom? I had a mom and a dad. Wow, was I lucky to have both? Yes and no. My mother never saw my dad, pretty much because he was at work, and they had very few friends. So my social learning was very limited. And then, of course, what I learned from kids on the block was not something that I would want to take into a relationship later in life. And so my emotional learning, social and emotional learning, this is being touted in schools and organizations around the country. I have to say that what we're going to show you now is what we're interested in is promoting the expression, and we'll talk about it, kids becoming articulate, adults becoming articulate in expressing their needs and feelings. So what are your emotions? We're going to look at what emotions are, a broad range of them, in a few moments. So let's go to the next slide. We're going to talk about empathy. Here's the dictionary definition: the ability to share and understand the feelings of another person. Do you know how I'm feeling? I'm in front of dozens of people. Often it's hundreds of people. I can't see them. And am I nervous? Am I anxious? Am I uncomfortable? Yes. So you would have empathy for me, but I'm also motivated and inspired and grateful. So empathy can make the holiday a more positive experience. So how, you may ask? Okay, I'd like to share a little bit about what empathy is and isn't. Let's go to the next slide. Based on the work that we do, inspired by the book Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg, and may I recommend that everyone put this on your gift list. Nonviolent Communication. You can get the book directly from the publishers, Puddle Dancer Press, Puddle Dancer Press. We prefer to support local and independent businesses and not giant corporations. Some of you may be familiar. One that is very well known begins with an A. I won't even say, but we never buy things. We never buy office supplies or anything from the big A. We go right to the source. And so we really recommend Puddle Dancer Press for Nonviolent Communication. And you can read a chapter on it in our book, which I believe the link to that has been put in the chat. So here is empathy blockers. What are empathy blockers? Whoever heard of empathy blockers? So let's say I meet a friend and I said, oh, I just had the worst day today. My car wouldn't start. I live in Manhattan, so we don't have a car, but most people do. So my car wouldn't start, and the traffic was so thick, and there were delays. I just couldn't get any work done, right? So I say that to a friend, and then my friend says, "You had a bad day. Oh, let me tell you about. I've got so many problems with my car." Now we think we're being social. That's also called one-upping. Oh, my friend says, well, you know, there's a really good book you can get about car maintenance. And also, let me tell you, if you take side roads on the way to work, you won't. Has anyone ever received unrequested advice, let's say from a parent or your significant other? Unrequested advice. So one-upping, advising, educating. Good book on how to start your day. Even arguing. Oh, come on, you know, it wasn't that bad. Judging. Well, you know, it's your fault for not taking care of your car and not thinking ahead. Analyzing. You say this every time I see you. Consoling. Look, the day's over, so just relax. Discounting. Well, you should be glad you have a job. So storytelling going on and on, data gathering. Oh, what time did you leave the house, and when did you get to your job? So these are called empathy blockers, and it's really part of how we interact, but it creates a disconnection. So now we're going to in the next slide. This is what we call empathic listening. I had a really rough day today. Traffic, couldn't get my car started, couldn't get any work done. My friend says, wow. And then silence. This is what we find to be so useful about empathic listening. You say, wow, and then a moment of silence. You can say, oh, that's a lot. Moment of silence. That person experiences being heard. And many of us have, it's like we've been in a desert of being heard. I hear, tell me more. This is, as I said, I work with couples, and this is one of the first things I introduce to them is our empathic listening exercise, which I have them do. And they get to experience, especially when one partner has a complaint and the other one says, tell me more. Tell me more. Is there more to that? So, wow, yikes. These are in our exercises on our website. I think if you go to our website, you can go either to trf.net or relationshipfoundation.org because we are a nonprofit. All right, let's go to the next slide. This is a little video we made on empathic listening, and let's give it a try. Empathy, what it is and what it isn't. First, what it isn't. Your friend says, I had a bad night. I could hardly sleep at all. Here's what we call empathy blocking. Let me tell you how bad my night was. I only slept 4 hours, one-upping. Maybe you should take a sleeping pill. Unrequested advice, fixing. You know, there's a good book on diet and sleep, educating. You say this every day, analyzing. Well, that was last night, it's over. Consoling. At least you got some sleep. Discounting. Did I tell you I'm going on vacation next week? Changing the subject. Here is empathic listening. Your friend says, I had a bad night. I could hardly sleep at all. You simply say, I hear you. Then a moment of silence. That moment of silence is like taking a breath. Dare I say, a breath of fresh air. I hear you says, I'm present and receiving you. You can also simply say, wow, sounds like a tough one. I hear you, wow, yikes. All acknowledge that you are present. Empathy is being interested rather than interesting. Okay. When we did this exercise, one of the first classes we went into around 2009, we had a student in a local high school here who just burst out. She said, I've been being interesting my whole life. And now I know how to be interested. So kids really take to this, and you know, their ability to absorb new ideas because their brains are still in development. They haven't had thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of experiences like those of us who are a little older than in our teenage years. So I want to share two things about how you can avoid an argument with anybody, especially with family and friends during a holiday. I went to my high school reunion in Lancaster about 3 years ago. And I saw somebody I hadn't seen since we grew up in the same neighborhood since we were very young. And it was clear as we began our conversation that we had a different take on social issues. And what I did, suddenly I realized I'm not going to change this person's mind about anything. So I would say something about a social issue, and he would say, something in the opposite, an opposing view. And I started to say, I see your point. Instead of arguing, I said, oh, I see your point. And as we went on, he would say, more things we're discussing, he'd say, and I would say, well, yeah, I see, that makes sense. Well, it made sense to him. And I saw his point. So when you gather with friends and relatives and a conversation starts with someone you know who is thinking on a different and speaking and reacting on a different spectrum than you, all you have to do is say, I see your point, because you see their point. It's not your point. And then say that. I highly recommend everybody write this down. I see your point. That makes sense. And by this friend of mine, because we became friends, at the end of our conversation, he said, I'm gonna come and see you. I'm gonna get on my motorcycle with my wife. We're gonna come up and see you. And I said, great. And I felt love for this guy. We grew up. He remembered some things that happened in our neighborhood where we both got in trouble. But normally I would think I would write this person off. This is, I don't agree with them. I kept saying, I see your point. That makes sense. So who will argue with you if you say, see your point? That makes sense. As you begin a conversation with people over the holiday, or really forever. Okay, let's go to the next slide. This is the main thing we're going to talk about very briefly tonight. Nonviolent communication. Okay. Most of us don't think of ourselves as violent people. We associate it with wars and beatings and killings. But what about the words that we say to each other? They're often critical. That was stupid. Why do you waste so much time? You don't know what you're talking about. Well, the basics of NVC is learning to express our needs and feelings without blame and judgment, and, as we just saw, to listen empathically. So we're going to briefly go through this. Next Tuesday, the whole webinar is going to be on NVC. So let's go to the needs list. If you'll take out a piece of paper, pen, pencil, take a close look at this list. What needs would you say are important to you during the holiday? Friendship, closeness, community, love, nurturing, maybe fun and adventure. Take a few moments. We're actually doing a relationship practice. You know all these words, but we don't use them so often in conversation. What needs are important to you personally and during the holiday with friends and family? So we'll take a few moments to write those down. Okay, well, how do you feel when your needs are met? Let's go to the next slide. Oh, I feel good. Does anybody see good on this list? So often when we, in conversation, we say, how do you feel? Or how are you doing today? Well, I'm feeling good. Are you inspired? Are you motivated? Are you thankful? Are you delighted? I have to look at this list just to remember this. Do you feel relaxed? Do you feel peaceful? Do you feel hopeful? Wow. Now, as a boy, I was told, do not show your feelings. Do not. So now I have this list of feelings and I can say how I feel when my needs are met. We don't call these good feelings. We call them feelings associated with met needs. Some of you just made a list of your met needs. Now, let's go to the next slide. How do you feel when your needs aren't met? Not so good. I feel bad. Does anybody see not so good or bad on this list? No, I feel disappointed. I feel gloomy. I feel hopeless. I feel exhausted. I feel troubled. I feel conflicted. I feel, wow, suddenly we have a whole list of feelings that we can say what's really going on with us. Because if we describe what we're feeling in vague terms, it doesn't really give us a chance to get connected with the people in our lives. It's also a way to, and we'll talk about this more next Tuesday, it's a way to say, I'm feeling, let's say if you're with a coworker, I'm feeling disappointed. What's going on? Well, I just have a need for competency and order, and we have a meeting at 5 o'clock, and it's 4:30, and the file that we're supposed to be present is not ready. Oh, I'm so sorry. You know, I had to leave for 2 hours. My aunt went in the hospital. Oh, so your judgments about that person, about them being inconsiderate, because in the list of the needs list, you see consideration. So we often will say, you are inconsiderate. Rather, you can say, I have a need for consideration. Let's go to the next slide. There's something called non-feelings. Non-feelings, as you see, are words that describe what we think others are doing to us. And they disguise themselves as feelings, but they're actually judgments. Let's go to the non-feelings list. There they are. Especially when we work with kids in schools. Big one, I feel disrespected by you. How often have we heard someone say, I felt manipulated. I felt let down. When you say I feel abandoned to someone, you're saying there's someone who abandons people. I feel neglected. Well, how do you really feel? Do you feel sad? Do you feel disappointed? Do you feel worried? Do you feel angry when you experience what you think is being left out or neglected? And here are judgments of ourselves. I feel guilty. Oh, I feel inadequate. These are words where we are judging ourselves. If something is going on and you're not doing something adequately, you can say, I'm feeling confused. I'm feeling worried. I'm feeling disappointed because I didn't do this, I didn't do that. So these are non-feelings. These are some of the big ones. We have a bigger list that we'll show everybody next week on next Tuesday, but take a moment. I feel rejected. What does someone feel when they feel rejected? Sad, disappointed, angry, frustrated, confused. Now we get to understand each other better and we get to be more connected, meeting a need for connection. Let's go to the next slide. So we all have a strategy to meet our needs. And we're going to do a quick exercise to finish the night in a few moments. But please, because we have some wonderful things to share you at the end that we think will give you an aha moment. Strategies. Well, we all have a strategy to meet a need. Why did you come to this webinar tonight? What was your strategy? Well, was your strategy to learn, for a strategy to meet your need for growth, meet your need for understanding, maybe even meet your need for community and adventure. Okay, I'm going to go to site. So we all have a strategy. If you're scratching your head, you're meeting a need for comfort. So I ride my bike, well, a city bike, all around New York. And cab drivers often get very close to me. You don't want to hear what I say, the words that I say when they get close to me. Some begin with F and other words. But now I say, what was that? Because as this work gets more into your thinking process, I'm literally speaking to myself. So often I would drive up to the light and there's the cab driver, I'd shake my fist at, hey, you want to hurt somebody, I could use the insurance money. Now I think, well, maybe that cab driver has someone in the back seat who's about to give birth to a world leader. And we can imagine what's wrong with people, or we can also imagine what's right with them. So I drive up to the light, look at the cab driver, nod. Instead of building this energy, which actually affects our body. We'll talk a little bit about this, is how so-called negative thoughts can really hurt us physically. So just to give you one more example of strategies, many of you probably have a car. Has anybody ever been cut off while driving down the road? I'm going to guess just about everybody has. So what do you do when somebody cuts you off? You drive up next to them and you roll down your window and you say, "That didn't meet my need for safety and stability." No. You idiot. Or other words. Well, I guess if you're, some people here from California, you really don't do those things because it could be dangerous. But what if that person who's driving, who cut you off, is rushing to pick up their child at the school, and the lights have gone off, and maybe they saved somebody's life who was drowning a week ago, and they're a contributor to their community. And you can start imagining what's right with people rather than working your nervous system up about what's wrong with them. We don't know why someone cuts us off. Maybe they're in such a desperate state emotionally, they're not paying attention. But maybe they've done wonderful things in the world and helped many people. So everybody has a strategy to meet their needs. All right, we're going to do an exercise now. It's called the T exercise. So if everybody will please find, we'll take a moment, a piece of paper. If this exercise doesn't change your life, we will give you your money back. Wait a minute, this is the free webinar. We'll give you something. But okay, draw a line about an inch from the top. You want to write down something that somebody said or did that annoyed or disappointed you. Not something tragic, not something that, something that somebody did or said. So what I put up there is one of our board members, we have a board of directors, said one day to me, "Why do you waste so much time?" So I wrote that. But you could even, so it could be something short. Someone said, "Get over it." So take a moment, think about what is something that somebody said or did that annoyed or disappointed you. Okay, let's go to the next slide. On the left side, write the word feelings. And let's go to the feelings list. How did you feel when that person said or did something that annoyed or disappointed you? Take a look at the feelings list. How did you feel? Were you disappointed? Were you angry? Were you confused? Were you discouraged? How did you feel when that person said or did something that annoyed or disappointed you? Take a moment. These are the list of, they're universal feelings. When our board member said to me, why did you waste so much time? I felt bad because I didn't have a vocabulary of needs and feelings, and I felt disappointed. Okay, let's go to the next slide. And on your T, on the right side, write the word needs. And let's look at the needs list. What needs did you have that weren't met when this person said or did something you didn't like? When our board members said, "Why do you waste so much time?" I had a need for respect, need for understanding, need for friendship. We were friends. Maybe I had a need for empathy. I had needs that were not met. Let's go to the next slide and draw a line under your list of needs and feelings. And now put the word feelings again on the left side. And let's go to the feelings list. If you don't care about this person and they're not in your life anymore, maybe it was somebody that you were in touch with an hour ago. Either way, this is a guess. You're guessing, even if you don't care. You could care less. We're doing a relationship practice. What do you think they were feeling when they said or did something that annoyed or disappointed you? What were they feeling? So I'm thinking our board member was feeling confused, displeased, maybe frustrated. Maybe he was feeling upset. Could have been he was feeling overwhelmed at that time. I don't know what he was feeling. I know that I didn't like what he said to me. But now today, I'm wondering, what was he feeling that day? What do you imagine this person was feeling? Okay, let's go to the next slide. And on the right side, right, needs. What needs do you think they had? And let's look at the needs list. What needs did my board member have? Did he have a need for? Let's see. Well, on the row on the right, the next to last row, at the bottom, it says competence. Maybe he had a need for competence that wasn't being met. Maybe he had a need for clarity, a need for authenticity, maybe. A need for integrity. Oh, now I'm wondering, well, what were his needs? What did he feel? And what did he need? Now I'm starting to get a different perspective because I didn't like what he said. But now doing this exercise, it allows me to wonder. I'm wondering. I didn't like it, but I'm wondering. Maybe he had a need for peace of mind. Now let's look at this in a bigger perspective. Let's go to the next slide. Instead of a world of should, shouldn't, right, wrong, blame, shame, because I said I thought he was wrong, shouldn't have said that. Now I wondered what his needs and feelings are. Now I live in a world of what we call greater possibility. Now, if you were to draw a line, let's say from 1 to 7, how much more understanding do you have now of this person, even though they may not be in your life and you don't intend to have them in your life? But did you move a little bit on this line? Did you move? Would it be a 1? Would it be a 5? Take a moment. If you could put in the chat, actually, we'd appreciate it. After doing this exercise, did you have a little or a lot more understanding about why this person said or did something that annoyed or disappointed you? Please put a number in the chat. We'd appreciate knowing. For me, it was like a 7. I don't really know what he was needing and feeling, but it gives me some sense of perspective that I don't have to relate to this person based on my judgments. All right, we have a few more slides, but we want to make sure that everybody gets the survey. We're putting it in the chat again. And we have yet another slide that we think would change our lives. And we hope you'll get something out of it too. Here's Bruce Lee. We don't think of Bruce Lee usually as Mr. Nonviolent, but look at this. Don't speak negatively about yourself, even as a joke. Your body doesn't know the difference. Words are energy and cast spells. That's why it's called spelling. Ha! Change the way you speak about yourself and you can change your life. What you're not changing, you're also choosing. So words cast spells. Once we saw this, we stopped. We catch each other. Oh, this just isn't working for me. I don't like the way and we stop in mid-sentence because we don't want to cast any spells on ourselves. All right, the survey link is in the chat, I believe. Now, I used to be, I still am a licensed tour guide in New York City. I always wanted to live here. When I was very young, my dad and mom brought us here because my aunt had married a guy from Mount Vernon. And one of the things that I experienced early on was going to the top of a building I called the Empire State Building. Well, I could see the whole world from there. And there are many stories about how people wind up in New York. I did not one day say, I'm moving to New York, but something happened. I came to the city. There was some serendipity, and here I've been for all of my adult life. And I also, in order to help support our program here in the early days, and still today, I became a tour guide. And I love telling people about New York, and all the way from Wall Street to Upper Manhattan to Harlem, through Midtown. And I really enjoyed it because a lot of people have an attitude that New York is a scary, negative place. Well, what I used to do at the end of the tour, I would say, if you really liked the tour, we would appreciate if you would give a gratuity. And so we would also say things like, if you come from a culture or a country where tipping is not customary, you should try it while you're in New York. Taxis, restaurants, and it usually got a really big laugh. And people just lightened up about that. So if you liked what you heard tonight, you can make a donation and beat the rush to Giving Tuesday. And I believe our Giving Tuesday link is in the chat now. Now, we give up these webinars for free, and we're always grateful for a donation. We gave professional development training sessions for over 500 schools when they shut down and when school budgets were frozen. So we would appreciate if anyone who will go to the GoFundMe and share, or and especially send it to your friends, because we are working to get this work that we do tonight into schools everywhere, with the bullying and the drug use and the social cruelty and Instagram and all of the things that are troubling kids. We're really seeing that this work has made a difference. And if you download our book, you'll see student journal entries before each chapter. Now let's go to the next slide. This is Roger Bannister. In 1954, on May 6th, he broke the 4-minute mile, which runners have been trying to break the 4-minute mile since the 1870s. Well, have you been trying to have a peaceful Thanksgiving since the 1870s? Maybe with some of what you heard tonight, this will create a new atmosphere, a different atmosphere. And we believe there can be a tipping point, not only in the schools, but with your family gatherings. Wouldn't you agree that this is possible? Let's look at the next slide. Okay, so with this work, we see and believe there is the potential for all of us to develop a genius mind. Let's go to the, one more slide. These are some of the webinars that we have coming up. Like I said, next week will be Nonviolent Communication. The ACEs, that'll be on the 7th, and the prison system, neuroscience of empathy. Neuroscience is becoming so much in the conversation of people everywhere, schools, especially hospitals. And last but not least, here's our contact information again on the next slide. You can contact us about training sessions, our curriculum, our guidebook. And thank you everybody for coming tonight. Again, please take a moment to answer some few questions in our survey. And if anybody has anything they want to share, any comments, how we can improve our presentations, or just something that struck you as useful tonight, please open your mic and turn on your video, and we are happy to stay for as long as people want to share, if anyone does. Okay, I want to remind everybody that I grew up in crushing neglect. So this period of punishing silence.
So one question, Michael.
Yes.
Well, you spoke about the conversation you had with your friend, that you're like very, very different opinions or attitudes, and you just responded with that you heard him, and that seems to have a very good consequence. Was there a reciprocity with that at all? Did you get a chance to express yourself, or were you just on the listening mode with him?
Well, I was still learning the NVC, and we call it a relationship practice. To be right out front about it, I used this person, what they said, why do you waste so much time? I'm using him as an example. He has since passed away, but that interaction with him was really annoying to me. And as I learned this, I began to think, well, what was it that Andy was feeling and needing? So it released something. So when he just was this beautiful person, and so many people loved him, but it didn't matter when he said, why do you waste so much time? And so the resolution can come later with people. So if you thought about somebody who said or did something you didn't like, the real purpose of the exercise was, did you have a little more understanding about this person? Even if none of what they were feeling and needing was relevant to you, did you notice any similarities, that there were any similar feelings and needs that you both might have had?
Thank you.
That's also one of the connection points, is people will see that I had a similar need and feeling as this person who I had an issue with.
Well, Michael, I'm just going to come on. I'm sitting here with my family and my mom and dad, and we all appreciated watching this tonight. It was a good intro into our nonviolent communication and our Thanksgiving all back together. So we just wanted to say thanks.
Thank you so much. My school district is very interested and hoping to have a PD day with your foundation, and we're looking forward to connecting in that aspect.
Great. Well, we will be delighted, especially since you're from Ohio,
Go Bucks!
where I went to school, when I went to college. Yeah, thanks. It's great to hear that this had something to add to your family's vocabulary of relating.
Yeah, it was great. It was very
Where are
good.
you, Larry? What town are you in?
Currently, I'm in, well, for quite a while now, I'm in Kennebunk, Maine.
Oh, okay. Can you hold a second, everyone?
Larry, you're not too far from me. I'm from Boston.
Ah.
I come up
Not
that
too
way
far.
very often.
That was my neighbor, Bill, next door. He works at the New York Times, and he just was knocked on the door and drops off the paper. Kennebunk, wow. How's that? How is it up there? Up there, right?
Well, I've been up here since '75,
Okay.
so it works well for me. About a mile from the ocean.
Okay,
But I'm
good.
a New York boy.
Oh, okay, good. Well, I think that that's about it. If no one else has anything to share at this point. And then everybody from the Relationship Foundation, if we could all meet in a few moments on our company Zoom, we'll say, check in with each other, and have a great holiday, everyone.
Thank
Good
you.
night. Have a good holiday.